Why can't Nigeria stop the kidnapping of school children? Almost 300 pupils are missing after the latest in years of similar attacks. The mass abductions are blamed on armed groups and bandits demanding ransom. So how is the Nigerian government failing to deal with the long-running problem? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I am Hashim Ahalbara. It's every parent's nightmare, the kidnapping of their children. It happens all too often in Nigeria. In the second mass abduction within a week, gunmen kidnapped what some reports say are around 300 school children. Many viewers may remember the Chibok schoolgirls abducted by Boko Haram fighters 10 years ago. Kidnappings remain common, with thousands of Nigerians seized in the past few years. The government has promised to improve security, but the army is spread thin. So why are the attacks still happening, and what needs to be done to make them stop? We'll go to our panel in just a moment, but first, Fintan Monahan has this report.
Families here in Kaduna State want answers. Armed men raided their village and kidnapped more than 200 children. Many say the failure of security is the government's fault.
Please help us. Where is the president? Where is the governor?
It's the second raid in rural Nigeria within a week. Thousands have been abducted in recent years by armed groups seeking new recruits or ransom money. The state governor of Kaduna has promised to do everything he can to bring the children home.
By the grace of God, under my able leadership, we will try as much as possible to ensure that every child returns.
10 years ago, schoolgirls in Chibok made international headlines. More than 270 were kidnapped from their school in Borno State. Many were returned, but even today, the whereabouts of some remain unknown. 10 years on, mass kidnappings are still common. Nigeria's economic crisis and high unemployment has made things even worse, driving young men to join armed groups. Some, such as Boko Haram, have political goals, but activists say other groups are simply out to make money.
They have no theocratic agenda. They also engage in acts of kidnapping. They burn down villages. They attack farmers. They attack commuters. They attack schools. Now, bandits are simply motivated by money. They have no religious agenda. Once they kidnap, you pay them, you go.
Government leaders have pledged to fight back against the kidnapping crime wave, but the army is spread thin, fighting armed groups on several fronts. Many regions of Nigeria are lawless, and restoring security is a major challenge. Fintan Monahan, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guest, joining us from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. It's Kemi Okinyodo. She's founder and executive director of Partners West Africa. Bulama Bokarti is in London. He is senior fellow at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And from Kaduna in Nigeria, we have Sadiq Garba Shehu, who is security and defense consultant. Welcome to the program. Kemi, it is the same pattern that repeats itself time and again. Armed men riding into villages, storming schools, looting and kidnapping. Do we know who they are?
We suspect, I would say, a lot of the narrative is around the bandits, and that they are bandits from hiding in the bush that have taken solids in the ungoverned spaces and come into the villages to raid. In some cases, there's also the narrative that it's a mixed breed of the bandits and the insurgents who are moving down from the northeast, collaborating with the bandits in the northwest. So technically, we'll say we're not sure who they are.
Mm-hmm. Bulama, if their motive was a ransom, you would assume that they would go after wealthy neighborhoods. But these people are doing exactly the same thing, which is targeting schools, poor areas, desolate parts of the country. Does it make sense to you?
I mean, if we look at their mode of operation over the past few years, they do target civilian locations that you would normally think is poor, but their mode of operation is that when they attack schools or other locations associated with governments, then they would be able to extort ransoms from government and from politicians. And I think that's a lesson they learned from the Chibok girls. When Boko Haram abducted the Chibok girls in April of 2014, sorry, no one thought they were going to make money out of them. But when they saw that government at the time negotiated with Boko Haram and paid, other criminal groups across Nigeria thought, oh, there is money to be made from school children if they were abducted, because that will cause public outrage and pressure politicians to pay off.
Sadiq, the school in Kaduna is now in touch with the negotiators to try to work out a deal with the kidnappers. Where's then the local authority?
Well, I think the failure to stop attacks on schools in Nigeria, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, is a blame that can be shared by the federal government, by the state governments, by the local governments, and if we are talking of private schools, by owners of private schools. With regards to negotiation, there are two stories out there. The Kaduna state government has, dismissed the report that it is negotiation. It is sending a negotiator to meet with the bandits. But however, like I said, all the 3 tiers of government will have to, will have to take blame for this. There are aspects that have to be done by the federal government. There are complementary actions that can be taken by the state governments. There are complementary actions that can be taken even by the school authorities and community leaders. However, we do not have a coordinated action between this. In respect to this actual attack, you will find that this area is an area that is not even serviced by telephone service. There is no telephone communication there. There is no any police station present in that area. And while the attack took place around 7:30 to around 8, it was only 4 hours later, about 12 p.m., that government agencies were able to know that there was even an attack there. So you could see there's problem of infrastructure. There's also problem of the government not doing the necessary things. What do I mean here? When you look at the school, even from the video and physically, you'll find that this is a school in the middle of nowhere, that even, basic perimeter fence is absent there. There is no any sort of security, even a local security man that is standing guard on the school, you don't have. And this is not only peculiar to this school. A visit to most of the public schools in Nigeria will have that there is not any security on the ground.
Okay.
At the federal level, there are plans for safe school declaration, for safe school initiative, but the plan only stops in Abuja. You hear of the police setting up a special task force for securing schools. You hear of the civil defense setting up a special task force for securing schools. But the truth is that all these actions stop at Abuja. In physical, concrete plans for security of the school, that is completely absent.
All right. Kemi, if you look at the situation now, the reason why banditry has thrived in the northwestern part of the country is a combination of different factors: unemployment, poverty, mismanagement of public funds, a disgruntled population. And the government is saying now it is going to send the military to try to control the situation. Do you think that just by sending troops you will be able to put an end to this practice?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason, we've been having a knee-jerk approach to this issue. It's an insecurity issue that is caused mainly by failure of governance. And Sadiq alluded to that. So we have visibly, concretely, a federal government that sits in Abuja. We have visibly, concretely, a state government that sits at the state capital. The local government administration in Nigeria is missing and has been missing for close to 20 years. No elections take place at the local government level. Once this governance structure at the local government level has, I would say, in some places, totally eroded. In some places, you can still see a snapshot of it. So infrastructure is not on ground. Infrastructure is not on ground. Other things that need to build on it is not on ground. The criminal justice system stops at the state capital. when we're talking military rollout into this place, right now the military is spread across the 36 states and the FCT, full deployment across the country. That's not the responsibility of the military. What's the responsibility of the police? The police is presently recruiting, and recruitment is supposed to be 10,000, I think, across the country. But how did they arrive at the numbers for 10,000? Is there an assessment for us to know what the policing challenges are across the country so that we know the numbers that we need to build up? There's no systematic approach to this, but everything is just done based on a blanket process. So military deployment, I would say no, would not address it. Thank you.
Bulama, speaking of the options available for the government, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in a way, is grappling with the same challenge that faced his predecessor, Ahmed Buhari, before, which is basically they started big in words, but then they suddenly discovered that the reality was something different. Let's just try to unpack what is happening in the northwestern part of the country. Bandits control a massive area, particularly the Rugo Forest, which spans Zamfara, Katsina, Kaduna, and also Sokoto and Kebbi. And if you send the army or the police, everybody knows there's absolutely nothing they can do to fix this problem unless there is a massive, dramatic change to the way the government deals with those issues. What do you think will be the first step to be done by the president?
Look, like you said, this is a situation that has been escalating, especially over the last 8 years. But it is the history of criminality and banditry in that part of Nigeria has been there for decades. And as we speak, the estimate is that there are around 30,000 bandit members divided into around 100 different groups, wreaking havoc in the north central and northwestern Nigeria. And they have taken over hundreds of villages and have replaced local and traditional rulers, local politicians and traditional rulers, and have enslaved people in hundreds of villages right now, especially in northwestern Nigeria. But of course, there are other actors like those claiming to fight for Islam, violent extremist groups. Two of the main three factions of Boko Haram are on the ground in the northwestern part of Nigeria. And some theories say this particular attack was conducted by the Al-Qaeda affiliate of Boko Haram called Ansaru. Nothing is sure for now. We are not sure which group is responsible. When it comes to what needs to be done now, or the first step is necessarily security. Because this is a question of security. When you have groups who are invading villages, killing hundreds of innocent Nigerians every month, and raping women and abducting individuals en masse in order to extort money from their families and from government, the government has to respond with military force.
Okay, but you know,
and of course, when you respond with military force, then you have to then start in the medium and the long run to start to address the socio-political and economic issues driving some of these issues, including the question of infrastructure. But military effort is necessary. It is not enough now. It has to continue and it has to be improved.
Sadiq, Bulama has just said we need more boots on the ground. But President Bola Tinubu himself said we need to reform the security apparatus, the military in particular, to tackle contemporary security challenges. Because, I mean, you ask anyone with basic knowledge of security and who would tell you this is a massive intelligence failure from the military establishment, but also from the police and from the local authorities. Each time we're saying the same pattern, which is even if you send thousands and thousands of soldiers, the moment you don't have the intelligence, you won't be able to stop these things.
Yes, I completely agree with you that before we even talk about sending soldiers or police, because that will be a reactive, stance. What do we do to fortify our schools? It does not have to be all arms and guns and bullets that will protect our schools. There are the sub-school declaration, which gives certain things that officials at different levels can do to fortify schools. And we can start even with the basics. We are developing schools in Nigeria without accommodation for students inside the campuses. We are building schools without even the basic, perimeter fences. We are building schools without even having local guards or security people placed in schools. So we could start with this. In principle, Nigeria has...
I'll interrupt you just for a second, if you don't mind, but Bulama does not seem to agree with you at all on this. Bulama.
I don't agree with him, because what Captain Sadiq is referring to is the Safe Schools initiative that was introduced over around 10 years ago when the Chibok incident happened. Now, the idea that you can isolate schools and provide security for them when insecurity is endemic in the whole of the country is just a fallacy. It is a fantasy that will never happen. If you want to tackle insecurity, you have to tackle it from the whole community, and you have to confront it head on. And the way to confront insecurity head on is to take the fight to the bandit gangs in the bush. You cannot protect schools in isolation of the rest of the community. Criminals are wreaking havoc in the whole of the community, and you want to protect just schools. There are hundreds of schools across northern Nigeria, millions, if you like, if you put together primary, secondary, and university. And how are you going to isolate those? How are you going to immunize them in isolation of the rest of the society?
Let's let Sadiq develop further his own idea.
Yes, the point I am making, the idea between, we all know the importance of the future. We all know the importance of education. The idea between safe schools is that no matter the security situation, children should be able to go to school. And it is clear from the way, this is about the 74th attack on schools in Nigeria, 74 since 2014 of the Chibok girls. So the idea is that how do we ensure our youth continue going to school? Because without education, there is no future. And it is clear these bandits understand schools as very attractive to them, because they are very easy to attack. What can I say? They are soft targets. So this is the reason why schools, out of all the others, of course, I agree that there are other security issues, but schools being targeted. The only option we have now is stop children going to school, which will not be good for the future of the country, which will not be good for the future of the... So how do we ensure that despite the security challenges, our children, our grandchildren continue going to schools? This is the reason why schools have to be given special emphasis, and for the fact that these bandits find these schools very attractive to attack.
Kemi, the local authorities have tried in the past peace deals, amnesties, it didn't work. Now they are trying to recruit vigilantes in the area. Isn't this just another indication of a failure at all levels of the federal and the local?
I think it's I agree it's an indication of failure at all the levels of government within the country. And if I add to what Sadiq is saying, the issue of schools being attacked is increasing the numbers of out-of-school children in the northern part of the country. And if we have a foresight on development and indicators for the country, even for the north, the country doesn't augur well. Even the southern part of the country doesn't augur well with these challenges. Vigilantes is a knee-jerk approach also. We must have a holistic approach, a full security, a holistic security approach, starting from the community, scaling up to the federal level. So at the community level, you can have mechanisms that exist that help to look at certain issues, and then we scale it up, and then we know where the NSCDC comes in, we know where the police comes in, we know where the military comes in, like a concentric approach, a concentric circle approach to the security, to addressing the insecurity within the state, within the community, and at the end of the day, within the country. But one without the other is not going to work. Sharing of information, gathering, analyzing information so that it becomes tangible intelligence, that it is actionable, an effective response, bottom up, up, down, needs to be looked at, and it needs to be coordinated effectively. But right now, everybody seems to suspect the other person. And at the end of the day, it's the grassroots, it's the community on the ground that are suffering for this skewed structures that we have in place.
Bulama, the government had 10 years from 2014 with the Chibok kidnapping to understand that there is something wrong and that it's about time to change the doctrine itself. But nothing has happened to the point where we're seeing this pattern repeating itself time and again across different parts of the country. 80% of the military is involved in tackling domestic issues when it should be focusing more on the border area. The police is not really having a bigger say. People are really skeptical of the role of the police in those issues. What should change, do you think? Is it the priority when this is the wealthiest nation, by the way, in the African continent with massive spending on the army and the police, yet it is facing this long string of issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think it wouldn't be fair on the government for us to say nothing has been happening. The government has been making efforts, but their efforts have clearly fallen short. And I think in particular, this government is only 9 months old, and it came and inherited a crisis, a cancer that has gone to stage 3 or even stage 4, and it's going to take time, unfortunately, to excise it and treat it from the body. But when it comes to what needs to be done, I think you are highlighting one of the key areas. And one of the key areas is border security. The guns, the arms and ammunitions and the drugs that are used to commit these heinous crimes come from outside Nigeria's borders. And unfortunately, Nigeria has not paid enough attention to the migration and custom officers who are in charge of our borders. We have a 1,400-kilometer border with Niger Republic, for example. We have a long border with Cameroon, with Chad, all countries in crisis or neighboring countries in crisis like Libya. And easily weapons and drugs are smuggled into Nigeria. We need to do more in terms of technology and personnel to make sure that the supply of drugs and guns and ammunition into Nigeria have stopped. Continuing to fight this crisis without securing the border is like you are scooping water from an overflowing bath without stopping up from running. The tap continues to run, and you are using a cup to continue to scoop the water while the water continues to flow from the tap. We cannot continue in that way. We need to rebuild the Nigeria police force because these are internal security matters, and it is because the police is failing. That is why the military is being deployed. Nigeria has around 150,000 police officers for a population of 220 million estimatedly. And around 40% of the police officers, 150 of them, are deployed to administrative duties and to protecting very important persons, politicians and rich people. And therefore, there is no police on the ground in rural areas, and that needs to be improved. And of course, the intelligence agencies also need to do more to, especially using technology so that we avoid fatalities or accidents on civilians like we saw recently.
Okay. Sadiq, do you think it's about time for the Nigerian government to team up with the Chadians, with the Cameroonians, and also with the Nigerians to try to secure this entire area that stretches from the Niger basin all the way to the Lake of Chad?
Yes, there is the element of transnational organized crime that is also associated with what is happening in Nigeria. So in that aspect, since something has a transnational component, it is very necessary to be in sync with the neighboring countries to ensure. And not only that, even working with neighboring countries, again, you have to prepare your own security personnel to be in sync, to be able to work and exchange information. For example, we have cultural differences, we have languages differences. So the Nigerian security agencies, whether police, whether migration, whether custom, they also need to have some skills that will be able to, that will enable them to work with countries in the Francophone countries. Here, what I mean is that if you are speaking, I have done some, migration projects with IOM. You find that Nigerian migration personnel cannot speak French. whereas the French people can speak French and they can manage a little English. It may look unimportant, but it's very important for you to exchange information, for you to, really coordinate with your neighbors. You have to know their system, you have to know their language, you have to know their culture.
All right.
So these are issues. But above all, President Bola Tinubu has talked of reforming the security sector. Reforming the security sector is a music that has been sung by many generations of Nigerian governments, but concretely nothing has been done. The Buhari administration promised a security sector reform. They didn't do anything. This president is coming, he has to do it.
Okay. Kemi, there's another layer to the story which you haven't touched so far, which is basically the animosity between the Hausa and the Fulani, the herders and the farmers. Is this something that has contributed to this increase in banditry in the northwestern part of the country? Briefly, if you don't mind, Kemi.
I'm not sure. The reason I say I'm not sure is that we might be over flagging something that is not really it. I think one of the concrete thing that has excavated this are the challenges, ecological changes that we are facing in recent times. So you find that water is becoming a bit more sparse. Arable land is also decreasing. So this brings undue tension between the two groups, right? So is it the perennial, is it between two is it between two groups because they don't like each other? Or is it between two groups because of contestation for natural resources, land and water? I would go with the two. Land, I'll go with the second one, which is land and water. And then when we talk about what Sadiq was talking about languages, cultural changes, challenges between two countries, that is when you look at it at the sovereign level. We know that the borders in Africa, and Nigeria not excluded, are artificial borders. So you have same people, the same language, in some cases, the same family, living on the different sides of the borders. They communicate, they engage, they visit each other. But in all of this, I would stress again, the nation state is trying to do this without bringing in the population on ground that are affected. These affected populations, they must have something to bring on the table.
It's an extraordinary array of challenges: climate change, water shortage, Boko Haram, the Islamic State, Western Africa, the West African province, and also the banditry. Looking forward to having this conversation with you in the near future. Kemi Okyondo, Bola Mabokarti, and Sadiq Garbashiho, I really appreciate your insight. Thank you. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hashim Ahalbara, and the entire team here in Doha. Bye for now.